Grog. Hey everyone, it's Peter Fickling here. Welcome to the Cider podcast. It's a new effort from me and Keri. You might have heard us out there in the podcast universe previously. We've suddenly found ourselves rather available at short notice, and so we've hurried together this little effort, and we've brought along for the ride our new friend Matthew Weir. So, Keri, how have you been? You keeping well?
I am keeping well. Yeah, I didn't have much sleep last night, so I cannot be held accountable for my actions right now. But yeah, generally very, very good. I'm pleased to be here with you two.
So early disclaimer from Keri there.
Yep.
for the paucity of her performance. And Matthew, some people might have stumbled here and just, and they're just big Archers fans. Oh, that's probably a good point. This is a podcast about the Archers.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Minor detail I should have mentioned earlier on. But yeah, and so you might know Keri and I from that. But Matthew perhaps hasn't spent quite as much time on air. So Matthew, have you got a little bit of an introduction?
Well, I'm Matthew. Matthew Weir. I'm living in Portugal. Lovely, hot, sunny Portugal. Much like British springtime, I gather, right now, yeah?
Okay, so Matthew's smug. That's one thing you need to know about him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you would, yeah. I'm a teacher over here, but, that's essentially a front now. I mean, my lessons are just me making 12-year-old Portuguese kids listen to the Archers endlessly, and then I just set them homework in which they have to write me their views and jokes about the show in a second language, and then I'm just going to come on here and pass it off as my own.
Well, I mean, in future episodes, I would like to hear about if there's any kind of Portuguese equivalent, and if there is, we need a deep dive. This could be a whole sideline. We could just forget about this and start a whole new podcast about the Portuguese equivalent.
They love a good soap opera in Brazil. I know that, but they were quite disturbed by the idea of a soap opera on the radio.
Right.
Plus, they're also disturbed about the idea of a soap opera that doesn't have a beginning and an end. Most of them only last about 9 months.
and this is 70 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's like so many things about British life. You just take it for granted, don't you? That, obviously it's 7:00 every night, 4 days a week, hopefully eventually 5 days a week. You can tune in and hear this absolute madness. I mean, that was one thing I was thinking, Keri, was when we were suddenly made available. Was that a euphemism I used earlier on?
Yep.
When we were suddenly made available, that was our perfect opportunity to just run to the hills and get the hell away from the Archers for good. So we must love it if we're back for more.
Yeah, I've always said it's like being in a bit of a dysfunctional relationship, which isn't very healthy, really, is it? But I love it and sort of hate it at the same time quite often, which I think a lot of people, especially on the tweet-alongs, are similar, I think, in that vein.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know whether I've ever contemplated actually properly ditching it. I think the only times when I didn't really listen that much were when I was at university, which is pretty understandable. So there are sort of barren patches in my history, but not of late.
Yeah, so you've got sort of like Archer's alopecia, but you'll probably never go fully bald.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a period where I was massively barren. I mean, that was mainly to do to moving down to Australia and just the availability of something online. I mean, of course, there was the internet in the early 2000s, but the ability to listen online just wasn't there. So I was kind of a late 90s listener, and I was kind of gone for a long time until the Rob Helen storyline actually was what pulled me back in.
So when did you first start, Matthew? I don't think I know this about you.
Probably mid to late 90s. I mean, the real standout was John Archer dying.
Yeah,
I remember. But I'm very vague on that because I must admit, I was living out of home, living in Bristol, studying, and like you said, it kind of took a little bit of a backseat, but it was something that I like to have on in the background.
But when you sorry, I'm going to really I need to know
Go on.
how you very first came to listen. For most people, it's because their parents did, and it was in the background. But
wasn't my parents.
Yeah.
It was my Auntie Mary. Shout out to Auntie Mary, and I think she still listens from time to time now. If she hears this, she's probably screaming that she listens all the time. But yeah, it was kind of for her. And I like the music actually as well.
I'm watching The Queen's Gambit at the moment, and I'd much rather. I'm going to just basically forget about what Matthew just said and reinvent it as Matthew used to go down to the school basement where the kindly janitor, would let him listen to episodes, and they'd sit together. He was like an early savant. Sorry, very niche.
If you want to rewrite it as that, Peter, you do it.
No, it's actually no. Now I've said it out loud, it's a bit controlling, a bit weird. Talking of controlling and weird, Jade.
Yeah, definitely weird.
Yeah. Matthew, while you were tending to your students' needs earlier on, Keri and I were talking about Jade and about how what is it. So I think the actress did the best she could with some very peculiar scripting for that character, and I quite like the fact that they are giving airtime to these characters that might normally just be sort of like silent, but she has been spectacularly annoying, and she if her only function was to drive us as listeners into the arms of the Tracey and Jazza relationship, then she's done a very good job there.
Yeah, I'm kind of she's a mystery to me, actually. I mean, I get this initial
the mysteries.
Oh yeah, don't mention the mysteries. Yeah, well, they didn't even they barely got a mention this week, did they? I mean, she like you said, she's annoying. She's one of those people that seems to be deliberately belligerent about everything, easily upset. I think we've all had periods in our life where we're a bit like that, but you normally grow out of it when you're about 16, 17, right? So I didn't really understand. Is she a goth? I mean, he bought her a black leather jacket. She wants to go to a 90s club dancing. She's clearly younger than Jazza, although I'm slightly vague on how old Jazza is.
He's about 35, I think.
Yeah, mid-30s, because I get the idea that he's about 10 years younger than Tracey. But then she's also culturally bereft, She uses the term wazzock, which I've never heard used outside of Gloucestershire. And she thought that the idea of a fancy dinner was where Jim had napkins. I don't know. I find her wholly bizarre.
Yeah. I couldn't work out whether it was sort of not great acting or when Peter mentioned the terrible lines, thought, oh, actually, yeah, it was that, wasn't it? Like you say, the wazzock thing. No one says, maybe she is from, where did you say, Wiltshire?
Well, Gloucestershire, I think I've heard wazzock used. Maybe, I mean, that's just the only place I've ever heard it used. But maybe it's used more broadly than that.
But it's a Jeremy Clarkson type word, isn't it? I mean, it's a man in jeans and a plaid shirt type word. It's not, it's not for. She must. I think she's 26, 27. I cannot imagine in any part of the country a 26 or 27-year-old woman saying wazzock.
But would a 27-year-old sort of say about being given some shower gel that I think it's code for you're a dirty cow? A slight overreaction.
But she was always going to find something. I mean, that was just her. She needed an excuse to be offended.
But why?
And that's the one she chose.
Why did
because Jim gave it to her.
Yeah, but he hasn't been that horrible to her, has he? Or horrible at all?
He wasn't horrible at all to her.
No, he was lovely. So what's her beef?
She's such a minor character, so I don't want to sort of overthink it too much. But she's sort of she wants to control. She's one of those people who wants to control her partner, and so she's got to drive a wedge between whoever she's with and people who might be competing for the affections, or time that she wants.
Or she was just a massive mallet, a really clumsy thing. Being used, not a thing. She's not a thing. She's a person.
By the skin of her teeth.
Yeah. To literally just make Jazza go, oh, actually, no, thank you.
They made one of her less redeeming features was that she's massively ageist as well, isn't she? She's really got a thing about Jim. She kind of she started suggesting there was an attraction between Jim and Jazza, and that's why he kept him around.
And Linda, she made some ages.
Is Linda good looking? She asked, didn't she?
No, she's 70, which was a bit of a disappointing answer. But
what is it with you and old people? She asked Jazza, which is just
yeah.
And like you said, Peter, if they wanted us to dislike her, they did a very good job of it. I'm just happy in the end that, you know, the Jazzer's kind of kicked her to the curb.
She's given Jazzer the incentive he needed to go and sort of declare his feelings to Tracey, and I just feel a bit I felt a bit sort of tired and sort of like sapped by the whole thing. I was so excited when I keep wanting to say, I hate the word Trazzer, but when Tracey and Jazzer were potentially a couple, I was so excited by that, and I was really looking forward to them kind of getting together. And it's all been handled so clunkily. I mean, this it needed to have some background. They were always going to have a stumbling block. It was always going to have to be a bit sort of cumbersome how they got together. But I was just trying to think, any number of other ways. Like, I mean, a good old erectile dysfunction plot, that could have been quite fun. Little Jazzer finally failing him after sort of 36 years of good hard work, and then and we get some rather embarrassed bedroom scenes. Tracey would have been perfect for that.
Yeah, it was.
You don't sound enthusiastic there, Keri.
I'm not really. I just think it's a bit sad now that we're talking about it. It's not sad that we're talking about it, but it is a bit sad now that we're talking about it, that what it took for Jazzer to realise he actually prefers Tracey is for someone to really abuse Jim, be really, really rude, go off the chart about napkins and stuff. So, he made this person a cake, didn't he? And which for Jazzer's quite a thing. Quite a bit of effort to do. Bought her a biker jacket, quite a bit of money. So until the point where she went so odd on Monday's episode, he was sort of into the idea, wasn't he?
I think there's that kind of element of a lot of that was deliberately pushing him, though, because did you notice when Jazzer actually, when he snapped, she kind of pulled back a bit, like saying, okay, calm down. Like she wanted that reaction, but when she actually got the real reaction, she started to backpedal a bit. But the idea was, it had gone. Plus, she has a laugh like Babs Windsor. Did you notice right at the beginning of the episode?
Yeah.
She had that real kind of snorty giggle.
R.I.P. Babs.
Aww.
Yeah, R.I.P. Babs. Yeah.
But I'm glad to see the back of Jade, though.
Yeah, me too. And so there'll be no more pasta tricks either with her nose.
Oh, that was a good sign off when you said in your pasta, your pasta trick's disgusting.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he daren't say that at the time. Bit strange.
I mean, the big flaw in that whole plot, the whole Tracey and Jazzer thing for me, was that Jazzer basically gave up on Tracey because she was late for an evening with some pizza. That was the genesis of him sort of going, I don't want to spend, you've let me down tonight, so I get to go off and basically knock boots with Jade. So the whole premise of Jade being in his life at all was sort of built on sort of fairly shaky foundations.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm so easily led. I love Jazzer so much. It's a bit like you with Brian, Keri.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot for me to dislike him. Even when I know I should dislike him, I can't. So I'll forgive him virtually everything.
Yeah, and I did actually notice as well how brilliantly acted Jazzer and Jim are. Again, when they had their little conversations, I was really sort of sucked in to their little world.
Do you mean when he went back and kind of had a heart-to-heart about how he'd broken up with her? And
yeah, it was really good.
He's Jim when he first came onto the show was very one-dimensional, and now obviously we had the I nearly called that guy generic, the old guy who abused him. But anyway, sorry. The horrible plot line. Beyond that, it's not irrelevant, but that's not even the reason I'm saying it. Like he's already starting to get there. His petty jealousy with Robert Snell, his kind of like the fact that he and Shula went back and forth, and he was quite conciliatory and sort of like quite graceful with Shula. Like he's become this very sort of nuanced and rich character.
Yeah, exactly. And I just liked that during that discussion, Jazzer revealed about Tracey that she's a really good mate who I fancy, and I thought that's perfect.
Isn't that what you want?
Yep.
Yeah. It's just like when I got married to my lovely wife, I said in my speech, I was like, Charlotte and I have discussed sort of like love at first sight, and Charlotte and I, there was an instant connection when we first met, but like the whole idea of love at first sight, it's like it ignores the most important thing, which is, I mean, obviously you're not going to marry someone who you don't have great sex with, but equally, if the physical attraction is not enough. That sort of soulful connection can't just happen across a room. So I always feel like love at first sight's almost kind of like insulting to your partner because it ignores that friendship, the depth of friendship you need to commit to someone.
Yeah. And did you get a fry up after? That's the main thing, isn't it?
I did crack a rather cocksure joke on Twitter about the fact that I'd already had 10 fry ups.
Sounds like a really
evening.
good deal, that. You get a shag and then a fry up.
It always comes back to food with Jazzer, doesn't it? I mean, he likened her to a variety of pizzas and
True.
single malts. He demanded a fry up after coitus. I'm sure there was another food. Oh, he had to sneak down and bring back a pancake up his jumper for Tracey.
Oh, that's right.
She'd already done a runner, hadn't she?
But if Matthew, Keri is a famously meat obsessed carnivore. Sorry for the pause before carnivore there, Keri. And Matthew, I don't think we mentioned this in your very brief bio earlier on, Matthew. But Matthew is obviously a trained chef. If someone told if cooking for someone is the easiest way to keep them happy in the world, it's like there's no sweat of sweat off my brow. Absolutely brilliant. I'd be over the moon. You want sex and then food. That's all you're asking from me. Brilliant.
Yep, and we've all seen your homemade lasagna pasta, Peter. So.
Yeah, Matthew's inspirational.
Yep.
If we get desperate for content, we might have to sort of make Matthew's recipes sort of a feature on the show.
I really hope this is the end of the food sex thing for Jazzer and Tracey, though, because I mean the last time I heard Tracey cooking up something at home, it was baked beans and fish fingers for Brad and Chelsea.
Yeah,
and the idea of them getting frisky with that is not so. I don't really want to get into that.
Oh, I had some fish fingers last night. They were orgasmic. They literally were.
Were they breadcrumbs or batter?
Oh, breadcrumbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keri's not an animal. I actually bought some of those battered. Well, anyway, that's it.
We might be going off topic.
But essentially, right, lads, do you think that, I know you don't like the Tracey term, but do you think that Jazzer and Tracey are a good match? Because I do. I definitely do. And there's a lot of debate about this, but I think they can really make each other happy.
The debate confuses me. It completely confuses me. Because they're so obviously perfect for each other. They have high expectations in all the right areas. They want to be entertained by the person they're with. They want to be made to laugh. They want to, knock boots. They want, and they're completely disinterested in appearances. So they'll be, they can both be themselves, which I think is obviously a bugbear for them. You have Tracey's long settling in period when she was first working at Grey Gables, because everyone was too busy judging her by her accent and by her kind of slightly rough edges before they realised she was actually quite a sort of intelligent and sensitive person. So being with someone who is never asking any more than just, an honest representation of who they are is perfect for both of them.
Yep. I think some people on Twitter have said Tracey deserves better and Jazz is just a layabout and stuff. I don't see it that way. I think they're both lovely, lovely people, essentially, and they're very open with each other, and that's what I love.
He's not performative. That you have people who are desperate to show how good they are all the time. When anyone has a problem, Jazzer is there. He might grumble, he might whine while he's doing it. He might turn up a bit smelly, a bit drunk, but he gets it done. Looked after Jim. He's looked after Tom enough times. He was a good friend to Ed. He is a friend in need.
Matthew, what do you reckon about this pairing?
Well, there's no. He's very open, isn't he? I mean, he said to her, if I got a great job, I'd never up and leave. And she said, well, you'd never get a good job.
Yeah, and harsh.
She threw it straight back in his face, like, you're useless. What are you talking about? I think they're a great pairing. I mean, who knows? There's 10 years difference, I suspect, between them. But the idea is that, he's tried this albeit very briefly this life in the fast lane with this mysterious goth nasal pasta queen, and it hasn't worked out. And he's gone back to what he thought would be a good thing before, although he was totally in denial about it, which is Tracey. I'm fine with Trazer, by the way, Peter. It's not a problem for me.
Okay, all right.
But no, I think they're a good pairing. I mean, what I was really happy about was when he was last week, when he was looking at her in her yoga pants, and he kind of paid her a whole bunch of compliments, but he failed to use, like, half of my family are Scottish. I won't do the accent, but he failed to use the obvious one, which is like, "You look no bad." And he used that this week with Tracey. He said, like, "You're no bad in the sack," didn't he? And it was a done deal
or something.
Yeah.
They were good. It's very, very difficult to act sort of sexy, or aroused. And I thought they both did a good job of doing that without having us reaching for the off button.
Where she said, "I might need a bit more persuading."
Yeah, the kiss was a bit unsexy for me, I must admit.
That's impossible, though, isn't it? Because it's right. It's because back to your, this is where I'm on your student side, radio soap operas, because it's all in your ears, isn't it? I mean, Sid and Jolene is the famous one, Ian and Adam, all of the, I'm not. What's that thing called where people listen to YouTube videos of people kind of sibilating and kind of like papping and. Or ASMR or
SMR. Oh, yeah. I know
what it's called. Anyway, that's the opposite of me. I don't want any of that nonsense. So the sound of people kissing in my ears, I think most of us are saying, no, thank you very much.
But what I did like also, I've just remembered, is that Tracey sort of, he was going, but what about us having a go at things? And she did make it clear that you're still a big kid. I need more than just casual fun. So she doesn't want to be messed about, and she's made that perfectly clear.
Yeah, she referenced the kids, didn't she, as well?
They've got a fairly soft landing there, haven't they? Given that he lives next door, so it's not like it's a convenient setup. They can basically be living. They can basically see each other as much as they want, but they've got instant privacy.
It's going to be fine, honestly.
I should have prefaced all of that by saying, "Penne for your thoughts, guys."
Matthew.
That's the bit you need to edit out, Peter.
Yeah. Well, Keri and I were joking before the episode about whether we could just sort of dial up one of your cracking puns, and I think I've just made a decision in my head about.
Have you just accidentally initiated the pun generator?
We were literally going to sort of go, "Now, Matthew, joke time."
Come on.
And you've got to just be like
man.
a performing seal.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Next topic. What is it?
So we're recording on a Thursday, and so yesterday on the when Alice had just been caught by Chris, I felt this kind of gnawing despair. I really wasn't ready for Alice to relapse, and then today I felt kind of buoyed by it, and I felt quite sort of lifted by a lot of the reactions I saw on Twitter. Everyone was really giving Chris a massive kicking. Were you on Team Alice on this one?
Oh, I wasn't. I don't think Chris deserves a kicking at all. I think it's too tricky, the whole situation.
Yeah.
I think he's well within his rights to be panicking like hell and not knowing what on earth to do.
You're 100% right about sort of in the bigger picture. Chris does not deserve to be given anything except for the benefit of the doubt. He's allowed a few or several or lots of missteps, but I think just in isolation for that episode, it was kind of like I wasn't ever cross with Chris, but it was just kind of like, it's just so obvious. Everyone's saying the same thing. They need to tell their family.
Yeah.
He needs to have a more nuanced and complete understanding. He needs to research what his wife's going through.
He does, but in that very burning moment, he's thinking Martha is drinking alcohol.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And I would I have had the guts to do the same thing to take my infant son and drive out, head off, and potentially have to then,
drive to Felpersham and buy all the formula.
Yeah. Yeah. Is Chris stupid? That's a whole separate conversation.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But on the telling the family front, do you think, will Alice just me able to say, yeah, we need to do that at this point in time. I'm begging for this to happen so badly.
I've got a question I'm going to ask here. I'm going to channel for those that remember, like inner Donald Rumsfeld, which I don't do very often, and you guys can probably help me out here. On the subject of who knows, all right? So who knows that Alice knows that they know? And who knows about it that Alice doesn't know they know at this point? Because as far as I remember, Harrison knows and Alan knows. And
Emma.
Does Emma know?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I must have slept through that one.
Because Emma doesn't know necessarily about the depth of it, but she got the phone call, the drunken phone call, and also Ed had told her because Ed had caught Alice in the show.
Yeah.
Does Emma know about the rehab and the fake trip to Bath and all of that? I don't think she does.
She's got it on her radar though, for sure. You can tell by her hesitancy when things are mentioned. There's a weird, she's thinking, do they know what I know and stuff at times, isn't she?
Emma and Alice had that conversation where Alice was sort of sheepishly saying, "Oh, I just want you to know that I'm trying to get healthy and I'm looking." So she spoke in sort of in code, but it was well understood by Emma. And then, of course, Gavin knows, and Peggy knows. Is there anyone else?
Well, Harrison knows.
Harrison, yeah.
And Alice knows that Harrison knows.
Yeah.
I just assume Alice doesn't know Peggy knows.
No, I think that's the gap in her knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's where it all runs down the family at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that Peggy hasn't thought to flag it to, like, Brian, Jennifer,
What they need is a birthday video for Peggy to record.
Saying you're drunk
Exactly.
flat.
Yeah.
Yes. But obviously we now have the christening looming, don't we? Which will it be like the drunken? Was it a funeral that Alice got legless?
Yeah, that was Nick's funeral. Yeah, that was the original moment that we realised that Alice wasn't just a heavy drinker. I think.
I mean, I'm looking down at a piece of paper, and I wrote christening ? Boozy ?
And she obviously, that was a massive distraction technique, wasn't it? Where she went, "Oh, I know, Chris, let's have a christening." Oh, it's like, over there, look, a shiny thing. Don't talk about me and my drinking. When actually what will happen is it's a massive party that's going to happen with quite a lot of people there. So either the script writers are going to do the massively obvious thing where she gets arseholed and it's all in public and there's a bit of a meltdown and everyone realises, or it will just be nervous tiptoeing around the whole thing to the point where Chris loses it.
I'm hoping that with this little micro sort of incident this week, what they've done is tidied it up enough to say, okay, we've dealt with that, and we all know it's a long-term thing that Alice has to go through. She's made this solemn promise to Chris, and we're just going to push that this is going to drift off for a while, because it's got to be a very long-term plot. But I do, back to your point, Keri, I do think it's very weird that I don't understand why she's not burning to tell her family, of her mum in particular.
It's the shame, isn't it? I guess that's driving her.
But in that family, surely of all families, why would anyone have any shame?
She's expressed her feelings of inadequacy, hasn't she?
Yeah.
Before, and if this isn't a feeling of inadequacy, I don't know what is. So to actually admit to this, in inverted commas, failing when actually it's an illness, is very, very difficult. So I'd love her to admit it, but I think it's going to probably be Chris who tells them rather than her.
They are definitely playing up to this idea of how alert the baby is, because the conversation with Brian was very much, oh, she's so alert. Oh, do you think so? Yeah, she's as bright as a button. It's like, well, they're really,
she's going to be as clever as her mother.
Yes, and what was it he said? That she's going to be she's got a farmer in her or something bizarre like that. He said that took her around the field. One of the things I liked was he said the absolute highlight was Adam going past in a tractor.
I know.
You know,
I'm so glad he went past.
yeah, it's always a highlight if he doesn't stop, right?
Keep going, love. Yeah.
But yeah, she liked the lambs, and he made that reference about, it's.
I love
But
Brian. I loved him being in this episode. In this week's episode.
Yeah, he was a breath of fresh air, wasn't he?
He really bloody was, and he said he came to the rescue. All he did really was take Martha out and actually gave wine, which was not a rescue. But he doesn't know, does he?
He did something, I think, as well, which went under the radar, which was he knew that he had a granddaughter that wasn't sleeping. So he brought over Adam's partnership minutes, which would send anyone off to sleep.
That's what I should have done last night when I couldn't sleep. Just played some sort of Adam tape.
Yeah, I can imagine him doing some kind of partnership minutes over whale music, maybe.
Yeah, I think I'd get too irritated to sleep.
Maybe
I
Kate
wouldn't
uses
be able to
that up at, in her yurts.
Oh, she was good this week, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was great, wasn't she?
She's so spectacularly annoying, but in an entertaining way.
Yeah,
I can feel every hackle I have, raising just with annoyance. But it's also the apple hasn't rolled far from the tree, because Phoebe's becoming increasingly annoying as well.
Yeah, but Pushy Kate has Pushy as her middle name, doesn't she? And Phoebe, I think she's being set up as being a sort of strident woman character for the future. Phoebe's definitely going to be featuring heavily as a main driving character.
Yeah, definitely. She's like Deborah Meaden without the charm.
She seems like she's going to be the buffer between Kate and Brian in this particular storyline, doesn't she?
Oh, that was quite interesting, because Brian was uncharacteristically ruffled, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, I'm a bit cross, typical Kate. He sounded like he was on the warpath.
Yeah, he's been sitting on the loss of the house, hasn't he? I think that's bugging him.
And just remind me, was that Kate? It basically they could have sold the land and kept the house, and it was Kate and Jennifer sacrificed her lovely kitchen for the good of Kate and
spiritual home.
Is that absolutely what happened? Am I remembering?
Yeah. Yeah, because when Brian said it, oh my God, we lost our house because of her refusal, point blank, to move spiritual home. It just sounded so bloody ridiculous, didn't it?
I mean, she said that she wanted to move the yurt so they would have the beautiful view of Millennium Wood, because her beef was that at the moment her guests wake up to Adam's farm machinery. So I thought only Ian had that honour,
Ooh.
But I'd assumed that spiritual homes was worth fighting for. Why else would you kick up such a fuss? Oh, of course, she's Kate. That's why.
Yeah, he got very, very angry very quickly about that, didn't he?
I don't blame him. He's always right.
And one thing about, Kate, I do like Kate, but she does annoy me a lot. And I think part of that is I lived in a few formative years in the Montpellier area of Bristol. And if anyone's lived in that area, it's full of Kates and Russes, actually.
Oh,
it's
God.
basically like you're rubbing shoulders with them at every turn.
Yeah, really self-righteous and vocally so.
Mm-hmm. I once saw an ad in the local newsagent in Montpellier where it was an artist asking if he could move in and live for free and he would pay in art. That's Russ, isn't it, basically?
Yes. It is Russ, literally is.
But that's what he's doing, isn't it? But he's not even providing art. He's
getting Jacob Portland of Stoke to knit people sparrowhawks.
But to be fair, he is selling them, and for the asking price as well. So
wait, he sold one.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other show, isn't it?
I wish he was in it more, to be honest.
Vince Casey is an influencer.
Or Vince.
Yes. Russ and Vince.
I love it. I love Russ.
Yeah.
I absolutely love him. I mean, I think he is even more than Jade. It's just such fine work by the actor for him to be so pompous.
He does have. I never ever thought I'd be defending Russ, but he does have some depths. Like when he was giving Lizzie some honest advice when she was going through her Usain Bolt speed trip through depression. Late last year, he was quite. He did show a little bit of spine and a little bit of gumption.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt he was trying to get in her knickers, to be honest.
No, but
at that point,
she's about 4 or 5 times too old, isn't she?
I don't think age differences matter much to him, do they?
Ex-wife was a former student, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I think he's got form, but yeah, it's not an attractive quality.
I'm with you, Keri. I really thought they were trying to drum up a romance between Russ and Elizabeth. I was convinced that was where they were going with it.
And I'm hoping that the reason that they didn't do that was because if they did do that, he would have to be banished.
I think he's for keeps, isn't he? I mean, he's been around long. He's been around long enough that he could split up with what's her chops and Lily, and that he'd still stick around. Like, I mean, I think he's a kind of established enough character. I mean, same thing with Toby and Rex. I was kind of a bit worried that they were just going to be vanished, but I think they're kind of. But they need a certain amount of young flesh to keep the kind of sexy who's pairing off with who nature of it going, don't they? Because Tom's like 40 now. That whole generation of young people sort of aged out of the plotline of that part of the plotline, haven't they?
Yeah, he's a funny one, Russ, isn't he? Because he's such a parasite, but is so snobby about everything.
But I think he would argue he's a symbiote. He gives as much as he takes. And it's he's he's locked in a
What's
mutually.
He giving? What is he giving?
The erudition, the genius of his perspective.
I think he might also
of knowledge.
I think he might also just realise he's onto a good thing as well, because when Vince and Elizabeth got tanked up and just laughed at all the crochet artwork, he would have probably thrown an absolute shit fit about that a year ago. And this time he was very kind of understanding of it, really.
Yeah.
Well, Vince laid it out in no uncertain terms. He spelled out exactly the what a good situation Russ was in. He mentioned the where he was living, the fact that his mother-in-law tidied up all right and aged well. Lily was a looker, I think he said as well. It was all a bit inappropriate in a way, but
it was.
But if it was anyone but Vince, I probably would have judged him. But Vince is my Brian. I adore the man.
There's more to come with Vince.
So Peter's got Vince. I've got Brian. Who's your top favourite, Matthew?
Are you asking me? My favourite character? Well, it's difficult because he's not a regular. I mean, I do really like Brian.
Can I add a criteria, please?
Yes,
Keri, Matthew. Yeah. The thing about my love of Vince and Keri's love of Brian is it is almost irrational. Like there's virtually nothing that Vince can do wrong, and I think the same for Brian, right, Keri? You don't.
Yep.
Yeah. So it doesn't need to be. You don't need to be able to justify this. It can be kind of like a sort of gut thing.
Yeah.
If I was to talk about someone whose voice when it comes onto the Archers, I just sit back and think, they're in it this week. It's probably Jim.
Oh yes, yeah.
Oh,
that scene after the birthing in the car, where it was Jazzer, Jim, and Brian all sat around the breakfast table. I was so envious that I wasn't there with them.
I did talk about that as being a favourite scene myself on another podcast. Yeah, I loved that. And a fry-up was involved. I think I just like fry-ups, really.
The cholesterol in that house must be through the roof.
Keri's house as well, bloody hell. Yeah.
Well, that whole...
anyone who follows on Twitter.
I've seen the bacon that you showed the other day, actually, Peter. So
yeah,
you fried your bacon, I grill mine.
I'm not trying to shame you, Keri. I just, but when everyone else turned up with this kind of keto high protein diet, you must have just thought, well, I've been doing that for 4 decades, without batting an eyelid.
Meat.
Exactly, pretty much. Any woman who's given as a Christmas gift a large jar of pork scratchings is on shaky ground when it comes to sort of like pushing back on this one.
Yeah, that was a birthday gift. For Christmas, I got the advent calendar of pork scratchings.
Well, there we go. Okay.
So,
I have a friend in Bristol who calls pork scratchings angel breath. I don't know quite what the reason.
I like that person without knowing anything more about them.
I did. It's. I mean, one of the things that sort of happened through all this weird patriotism and nationalism and strange kind of back and forth on Brexit recently has been sort of like I've started. I'd never really thought about the country I was from, but obviously we got like the pub culture. But one of the things like like the Eskimos have famously 50 words for snow or blah 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 all that stuff. But just the richness of our pub culture, I think there needs to be sort of examined, described a bit more. Like a guy I used to work with, he had a sort of 10 different words for pints depending on the time of evening, how he's drinking. So he'd start off with a freshener, then there'd be there'd be looseners, and and you knew exactly where in the evening, as he just sort of gradually worked through his kind of lexicon of pintology.
What was the last pint of the evening called?
I don't know, a knee trembler or something. That's something completely different, isn't it? That's something you do because you've had that last
you
pint.
Probably can't do because you've had so many bloody pints.
I did have a friend who once had sex up against the wall whilst wearing crutches.
Is that a cocktail?
He did like a cocktail, but he called it it was a crutch buckler when he had sex up against the wall whilst on crutches. Jesus. Yeah. Which I mean, just the upper body strength. I mean, Lee.
When you said crutch buckler, I was thinking of a different crutch.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Until you said about the.
Well, it might have been both. I mean, if there's walls, there's metal, there's metal rods. I mean, something. There's potential for injury.
Keep going. Keep going, Peter. None of this is going to go in, is it?
Well, no, we're people of taste and discretion. But I mean, having massively injured yourself in some kind of drunken sex-related injury, obviously our favourite character in The Archers, Lee, would be there to help you on your slow road to recovery, rehabilitating you, looking after you, entertaining you with delightful and interesting chit-chat all the way. I could not have been more upset than when I found out, and Kirsty breathlessly informed them and us that she was gifting them that house.
Oh God, infuriating. Absolutely infuriating. So much about it is infuriating. One is that there's a magic money tree / house tree, isn't there, in The Archers? That's awful. And it's only awful because I wish it was happening in my own life, really. The other awful thing is that the magic house tree thing happened to Helen and Lee. I mean, they don't deserve this at all. They shouldn't be having this house. Other people should benefit from the house. I don't like it.
But I honestly think,
really angry.
I like the way Helen pretends all the time to be, this faux surprise, like, oh, you're giving me the house. I mean, when Kirsty was offering her was re-gifting. I don't know if it's re-gifting if you give a gift back, the slow cooker that had been a wedding gift from Pat and Tony. All I could think was Helen was like, where is this going to go in the kitchen of my new house? That's yours.
They ain't getting that. Because she said, they won't be embarrassed, will they? And she's like, no, they won't be embarrassed. I'm keeping it.
But she's going to rent it to them. Is that right? Did I hear that right?
No, is it rent or was it then maybe selling?
She then did say
if you want to buy it.
Yeah.
So Philip's gone down for 8 years for being a modern slaver, and yet somehow his assets aren't all being seized. Right?
He wrote a special letter.
Yes.
Saying
well, I mean, I've tried to write special letters many times in my life to get out of shit, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah. I need to revisit the episode to properly understand that. And I'm sure legal Twitter will be going, what? In fact, I did see someone say Kirsty wasn't even on the deeds of the house. So you can't just write this thing to say that she can suddenly do what she likes with it.
I mean, it's all down to Philip's largesse, isn't it? It's the regretful, remorseful Philip, trying to look good in Kirsty's eyes. That's what they're leaning on.
Right, well, this is good, because what it might mean is that it's all absolute bullshit and Lee and Helen can't have the house.
Yeah, basically what's happened is we've had to sit through over half a year of modern slavery plot lines. Three young men mistreated physically and mentally and abused, sold to this evil fancy car driving Victoria. Hours and hours of our time just so that they can give Helen and Lee a big house without having to make it plausible, just so they could, without making Helen go and get a proper job and do some work. It's been and
which is fine if it then gets taken away at the last moment. I'll be happy with that.
But what is the worst thing about this? What is the worst thing about this? I mean, there is only one correct. Lee is now a permanent member of the cast.
I know.
He was at the center of it.
He was so happy. I thought he was going to order Mr. Wen's meal for 15. He was so ecstatic.
He's like Lofty from EastEnders. His ambition in life, and I don't mean his job or anything snobbish like that. I just mean like Matthew's hinting at. Just there's nothing to him.
There's nothing to Helen either.
But, I mean, Kirsty came round and asked, is Lee here? And Helen said, I don't know. He may have gone to work yet.
Yeah, you can't tell, even if he's in the room.
Plus, I think it's all his planning that he was making for the garden. He's going to build a swing, a climbing frame and assault course. If he builds an assault course, he's just going to be ringing Helen every 5 minutes at work saying, I've lost the kids.
Does it make me a bad person that when people are so sort of obviously nice that it just all I can do is suspect them and just think there's a by the way, this attitude has never been proven wrong. Basically every time anyone's pretended to be that nice or virtue signal to that degree in my life, they've always turned out to be complete shitbags. So I think I just think either Lee's badly scripted or he's even worse than Moss.
I just thought the most chilling thing he said was when they were Helen was trying to sell the idea to the both of them. And she said, Mum and Dad, just 5 minutes up the road. And Lee said, yes, the ideal distance. I was just like,
my God.
Is 5 minutes the ideal distance for Pat and
No.
Tony? I would like
not.
a natural body of water and possibly some volcanic Icelandic magma between.
A massive body of soup.
Elon Musk could turn the rest of his life towards creating infrastructure and transportation links to try and get Pat as far away from me as possible. It'd still be too close. She is. Anyway, because this is what it means, because they're in the house. It means, first of all, it means Lee, and it also means that Tony's going to be popping round. There's going to be some kind of awful plot line where Tony and Lee are going to have some kind of, who's the bigger man clash over doing some DIY to help Helen settle in. Bonding experience where sort of Lee has to say, I understand, Tony, what, but don't worry, I'll look after Helen. It's going to be awful.
Well, Helen did say right at the end, there's always a hitch. So maybe the hitch will be it all comes tumbling down as Keri wishes.
I do wish. The thing is, like Helen, I didn't like her before the Rob thing. I don't like her now. What the audience and the scriptwriters want for Helen, because they like her more than I do, is for her to find someone who is lovely to her. And so they've created Lee, haven't they? Lovely, lovely Lee. I don't know where I'm going with this, other than that I'm wholly unsatisfied with him as a character. But that's what they've done. They've constructed this lovely, lovely man.
You were saying earlier on, Keri, about people doubting Tracey and Jazz as a kind of like a couple who should be together. But you can imagine they'd never be bored. The conversation would always flow, and the conversation would be interesting to other people. I mean, those two, Helen and Lee, they are the type of people, all they have to talk to each other about is what other people have done. They're the kind of people, all they'll talk about is stuff on Netflix. or that funny thing that someone else said at work. Like they've got nothing of
no
themselves to give.
original thought.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah,
None.
Hell, I think
Absolutely none.
I think you're being very unfair to Helen's motivational speech for Kirsty, because all of this came from Kirsty ringing Helen for a chat, didn't it? I like the way like Helen answered. She said, "Well, I was just mid-cheese."
Oh, that I highlighted that with my highlighter pen. That was my top favourite phrase.
If I had to say, if someone rang me when I was mid-cheese and I couldn't talk, I would never have any phone conversations whatsoever.
Oh, Matthew.
I'm generally mid-cheese like 50% of my waking hours.
Charlotte caught me eating like just I've just finished a year of not drinking and I've managed to double my weight. I can't fit in any of my clothes, and it's because I've replaced booze with cheese
and chocolate.
And Charlotte caught me the other day like a bear tearing into a kind of like, a baby seal, just like tearing this huge fistful of cheese out of the block in the fridge. And the look
Do you ever bite the block of cheese from the fridge so there are teeth marks in the block of cheese?
When I've lived on my own, absolutely, it's my cheese, my fridge. I can do what the hell I want with it. But out of respect to the people I live with, no, I wouldn't. But I don't see for instance, if I lived in a house where it's not shame. Like if I lived in a house where no one else ate the cheese, I would feel very happy doing that.
If I have sliced cheese occasionally in the fridge, I do tend to roll it up in a little tube and eat it like that.
What was when you were working as a chef, what was your your guilty food on the way home after sort of like 1 a.m. after cleaning up the kitchen and sort of heading home? What was the thing that, obviously you're not going to cook again? What was your sort of terrible, bad for you meal, the cliche meal that chefs always have?
Rick's Hamburgers on the corner that's just opposite heading down to Temple Bar in Dublin. Sadly, it's no more. It's closed now during lockdown, but it's been going since the mid-80s. And it was a wonderful late-night burger place full of...
Was it a filthy place or one of those wholesome good ones?
It wasn't filthy. It was wholesome, but the clientele were filthy. And generally, you take a number after your order, and Ireland's a very jovial place, particularly in the early hours of a Friday or Saturday or Sunday morning. And when your number was called, everyone would cheer for you like you'd won the lottery.
That's good.
It was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, and I just recently discovered. So yeah, I mean, it was always something dirty and greasy on the way home. But I mean, that's the thing about chefs. Yeah. Most of the time, you forget to eat in the kitchen. You're surrounded by food, but I mean, guilty pleasure in work would have been the cheese trolley. Always nipping round the other side of the hatch and helping yourself to the cheese trolley.
So you literally were mid-cheese all your life, really.
And Helen, she always works cheese into everything. There was a couple of weeks ago, I think, when Kirsty was having her searching for the boys crisis, she said she was going to come and see Helen at work. And Helen said, well, you don't have to put a hat on unless you come cheese side.
I mean, that's another point, isn't it? Helen is such a detestable character that she makes cheese for a living, and I still don't want anything to do with her. That's
she can make cheese be revolting.
Yeah.
That is, you're right. That is testament
ultimate
to
condemnation.
Horror. Yep, the horror of Helen.
So, the podcast we've done an hour roughly, and I wouldn't normally mention this on air, except for the fact that we've received. So part of the reason we're doing the podcast is because we did receive between maybe 5 and 10 people sort of reaching out and saying, now that you are free, do you want to do something like that? To keep on going on air, doing another podcast, and so that's why we're doing it. But even more requests came in, bizarrely, without actually asking us to do a podcast, basically assuming we were going to say, keep it under an hour. So we're going to try and do that. Okay. We're going to try and do that in general. I think it feels like a pretty good length. We're not going to apologise if we do go over that, if we get chatting, but that's going to be our aim. If you want it to be shorter, then please get in touch. And in fact, part of the benefit of sort of rushing this out, it has been a real it's been really enjoyable. The three of us have put sort of a reasonable amount of effort to sort of get to where we are, but it has been done in a bit of a hurry. So the benefit is it is a blank canvas, and if there are any tweaks that you want, please do send us an email at hello@thecidershed.com. or get in touch with any of us on Twitter. Keri, what's our Twitter handle again? Is at the Cider Shed Pod. Is it pod?
It is.
Podcast or pod?
Pod, at the Cider Shed Pod. Yeah, so you can drop a DM or, just tweet openly in public.
Yeah,
don't mind.
We have little to no shame. So if you want to make the criticism public, then feel free, or just send any of us a message on Twitter. I'm at Pete Fickling on Twitter. Keri is
at Keri Warbis, KeriWarbis.
And Matthew?
I am at Mr. Weir.
Yeah, so we'd all... Oh, sorry, Matthew.
With capital M, capital W, but I don't think that makes much difference. I was very early in on the Twitter. So
yeah, I'm jealous of your Twitter handle, which shows how tragic my life has become under lockdown. I even think of such things. But
and there's Facebook too. Isn't there?
Yes, of course, Facebook. Please get us in touch with us on Facebook. Matthew, what's our Facebook handle?
We are hang on, let me just check. It is the Cider Shed Podcast.
Right, there you go. So, as I say, just to repeat myself, please do tell us what you want, because we are more than happy to try and oblige. Roughly, this is going to be what we're going to be doing. A bit of nonsense. We are not trying to compete with any of the other people out there. So we're just trying to do what we do, and we'll let them do what they do. I'm really, really glad to keep this in my life. I so enjoy getting together with Keri and Matthew. That's been one of the real treats over the last few weeks, has been getting to know Matthew better. And I can't wait to come back every week and share a bit of this, whatever it is, with all of you.
I'll second that. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Obviously, we had a small bit of contact before. But it's been really good fun, and I'm really, really impressed with both of you of how you've managed to get things rolling. Obviously, like all sheds, there's going to be a leaky roof every now and again that we'll have to plug, and people are just going to have to bear with us. Did we mention the email, by the way?
I think we did, but I'll mention it another time.
Okay.
One more time. It's hello@thecidershed.com.
Okay, beautiful.
Oh, yeah, and to that point, Matthew, thank you. Please do get in touch. We will be guided by whatever you send us. So if it's just you want to have more recipes from Matthew, fine. You want to tell me off for teasing Keri about her almost entirely meat-based diet, fine. But we're not, at the moment, it's an open book. So just tell us whatever your thoughts are, and we will be glad to hear.
Yeah, and just be great. This would probably be a one-off, but this entire episode until now didn't contain the word Shula.
Oh, fucking hell.
Sorry guys.
With your head.
Sorry.
Right, okay. Shut it down. Bye.